What data do you need to have in order to sell more product? What are the metrics you have to be tracking to make sure you get that end result of increased profits, more sales, more revenue? That's exactly what I'm going to be breaking down for you in this video. And there's going to be two main buckets that I'm going to be dipping into to make sure we get you that end result. So we've got the marketing, the asset, the lead gen bucket, and then we have the conversion bucket, because there's very specific data points, very specific metrics we're going to be tracking in each one of those buckets. All right, so we've got lead gen and then we have conversion. Okay, so on the lead gen side, this is all about getting the prospect in the door. But the problem is, I would say 90% of businesses out there have no idea what they're tracking, what they should be tracking, and what their real numbers are. We have discovery calls, coaching calls all the time with our clients, with prospects that come in through our funnels. And most of the time when we're asking these questions, people don't know their numbers. Okay, so right now let's focus on lead gen and exactly what you should be tracking, what numbers you need to have in order to set up your system the right way to end up with those increased sales and more revenue. Okay, so if you're running any sort of paid ads, which I would say the majority of businesses should be running paid media, direct response ads, you have to be tracking a couple key things in terms of your ads before we even get into customer acquisition cost, your CAC, and any of that stuff. So with your ads, when you first start running paid media campaigns, you're not going to have a lot of data, right? You're not going to have years of acquisition data. Your pixel's not going to be seasoned. So a couple things you're going to be tracking is you're going to be looking at your click-through rate for your link. So you're running, because your typical ad looks like this. Let's say you're running ads on Facebook, right? And then you're going to have your button, and then you have your copy on top. You're going to be tracking, like right off the bat, you're going to be looking at your click-through rate for the link. So what percentage of people are actually clicking on your link to go through to the next phase, which would most likely be your landing page, right? If you're starting off from scratch, you actually want to see this, your click-through rate being over 1%. Ideally, you're in that 2 to 3% range of click-through rate. That means your ad is getting a lot of attention, but also eliciting, getting the required action that you're looking for, which is, in this case, hey, click on this. Let me show you what we're doing, okay? So that's the click-through rate. Now, once you get people clicking through, you're getting the volume of clicks, the eyeballs on your ad. Now you're going to be looking at some other metrics. Now, a lot of people will be looking at, hey, well, what's my conversion rate for my page? With us, we do a lot more high ticket types of things. I actually don't really look at or care about the conversion rate on the page. I more care about my cost per book call, because with us, we're most often driving to a call. Sometimes we're driving for a lead. So let's break these down. So you're looking for a cost per lead, a CPL. So in this case, it's going to depend on your industry. You could have a cost per lead of $2 or $3, all the way to a cost per lead of $30, $40, $50. Right now we're running one specific campaign to a very niche, high value target type of group. Our cost per lead is like $55, $56, but we're okay with that because that's very, very targeted, and that's a high value lead that's being generated. So you've got your cost per lead. You have to know what your cost per lead is. So what happens is somebody clicks on the ad. Now you're going to take them to a landing page, and they're going to fill in their name, their phone number, their email address. That's what we're looking for. That's what I mean by a cost per lead. You have to know these numbers. If you don't, you're just flying blind, and oftentimes you're going to underestimate how much you're paying. Very rarely does somebody overestimate their cost per lead. Now, their cost per call is if you're running a high ticket product, right? If you're going super high ticket, depending on what we're doing, we're actually eliminating that lead step and you're going straight for a book call. So you're going to have, hey, here's a calendar, here's a quick application, book a call with my team. Now, let me give you two real life examples. For all of the workshops we run, for the big conference I run, for things like that, for the webinars we're running, the web classes, we go for a lead. So I'm banking on cost per lead. Now, if I'm presenting a prospect with our high ticket options, like our consulting products, our education products, I don't really care about the lead in that case. I care about the cost per book call. And depending on the type of industry you're in, you could have a book call for $200. You could have a book call for $500, for $600. It really depends on your industry. So I think the very first thing you have to do is really decide, okay, well, what's the best metric to be looking at? Am I running a webinar type of style? Am I running an ebook, like a giveaway, a lead magnet type of funnel here? Or am I looking to get people on the phone, on a Zoom call, Google Meet, or on the phone, a traditional phone call? If you're looking for that type of high ticket customer, which is going to be a better fit for that, you're going to be looking at cost per call, not cost per lead. So you're really at the fork in the road, right? So we have the prospect. Are we looking for a lead, which is, hey, you get the contact info, or are you looking for a call? If you're selling anything over $5,000, I would say you're going for the call, but you have to know your cost per book call before anything else, because now you have to work backwards and figure out, well, how many calls that can you take before you start losing money on this, okay? So on the lead generation side, you have to know your click-through rate for your ad, for the link. So if you're on Meta, you'll actually see a column in there. If you go to performance and clicks, it will actually tell you your link click-through rate. You don't want to use your total click-through rate because that's just people creeping your profile. You want to go on link click-through rate, CTR, it'll say link, and you want to have that over 1%. Ideally, you're in that 2 to 3% range, if not better. Now, once you start generating those leads, like I said, your cost per lead is going to be, if you're collecting that contact info up front, great. And that's going to vary on industry. It used to be as low as a couple bucks, all the way up to, in my example, we were, $55, $56. Cost per call, that's for your higher ticket, anything over, I would say, $5,000. You could be a couple $100 for a book call, all the way up to $600 and everything in between. Now, if you're selling a $100,000 product and it's very, very niche, you could have a cost per call of $1,000, but you don't care because, if you're closing 3 of every 10 people that come through, you're still very, very profitable. But if you're running a call funnel and your product's only a couple $100, you're underwater. It doesn't make sense. And then you're going to go cost per lead. Okay. So that's on the lead gen side. Now let's work out some numbers, the key numbers for sales conversion, okay? So we have 2 different columns we're going to work on. So the first column is going to be getting people on the phone, because yeah, sure, people will come in, you'll generate the lead, yeah, they'll book a call, but not everybody shows up. Not everybody is going to pick up the first time. So for running sales teams on the phone, so that's what I do. We've got a big team for our conference every single year that we run. These are some key metrics you have to track if you're running a sales team. Okay, so you have to track how many dials a day is that rep making. It has to be over 100 a day. If they're making 50 dials a day, 30, 80, I've never seen somebody have a great day having less than 100 dials. For whatever reason it is, it's just the sales gods. 100 dials a day plus, that's when good things start happening. So it has to be 100 or more. for outbound dials. Now, you're also going to track the number of convos. So my definition in-house is how many times do you get into discovery and you start having a conversation in discovery, right? Some people say, hey, how many connections? I don't care if you've connected. I care about how many conversations you're having. So the internal rule here is how many times do you get into discovery, you start having a back and forth about what they're doing, okay? How many of those are you having? So for my guys, let's say we're doing our conference, out of 100 dials a day, they should be having 12 to 20 conversations, okay? Now there's tools and platforms you can use to help boost your conversation rate, whether you're using a dialer, local presence dialing, that type of stuff, but you wanna maximize the number of conversations your people are having so you give them the best shot possible at closing those deals. Now, you also wanna track, and this is going to go back up to help out, helping out your marketing guys. You wanna track how many qualified calls. So out of those 12 to 20 conversations, what percentage of those people are qualified, AKA the types of people you actually want to do business with. Now, for my stats, we should be having 8 to 12 qualified people out of those 12 to 20 conversations, because not everybody's going to be qualified, right? Now, for my conference, we should be having, 3 to 5 on average sales out of those 8 to 12 qualified people on the spot. And this is orders, right? And our average orders is 1.7 tickets for that. Okay, so that's a real life example of the stats you should be tracking with the sales team. Number of dials they're making, number of conversations, number of qualified people, and number of sales. That's for like a lead gen. So that's your lead right here. If you're just getting name, phone number, because if they give you their name and phone number, now you have to get them on the phone. And it's going to take you multiple times. Generally, it's 7 to 12 contact attempts on average to get somebody on the phone, right? Because it's not their job to pick up, it's your job to get them on the phone. So it takes a lot of volume. Now, if you're running a book a call type of funnel, like we do for our higher end consulting, the metrics change a little bit because we're not doing a vast amount of outbound. We actually want to have people show up on a call, and that way, our team can actually learn about what they're doing, ask some good questions, get some data, and then make some expert recommendations for them. Okay, so on this side, on the book a call funnel, we're actually tracking, so number of calls booked, and then we're actually tracking number of show ups. So we're fortunate with our high-end consulting offer for events. So we help scale conferences and workshops and turn them into $1 million events. We have a very high quality of prospect because we're dealing with the founders, the owners. So we actually get a very high show up rate. But if you're selling something that's B2C, maybe you're selling a fitness offer, something like that, you're probably going to have lower show up rate. So maybe it's 60% of people show up. Maybe it's 75, 80% of people that show up. If that's the case, you have to know these numbers because in a little bit, we're going to work backwards to figure out, well, how many sales, what your price point should be to make sure that you're still profitable. So we have number of calls booked, number of show ups, and then you're going to have number of closes, so number of sales. Now, if you're running, depending on the type of call process, you could have a 1 call close or a 2 call close. If you have a 2 call close, now you're going to have less people show up for that second call. You lose them through attrition. So you have to figure out what your show up rate is for call number 1 and call number 2. Because there's always people that fall off the wagon and go. So maybe you have somebody that's doing your first call and then they book the second call. There's going to be a percentage of people who don't show for that second call. You have to track these numbers, right? Because the reason is, once you get down here and you're figuring out, well, how many calls do I have to make? Well, this is the simple math, right? Because if your product is, let's say, $10,000, well, and your cost per call is X, right? Let's say you have a cost per call of $500, right? You have 4 calls. That's 20% of your total revenue that's going into just marketing spend, right? So 500 a call. So at 4 calls, 4 prospect calls, that's 20% of your total product, which is 10K. So now it becomes really, really important to figure out, well, how many people are closing. If you're closing 1 in 4, if you're running a 25% closing rate on those calls, perfect. You're in a good spot. But if you're only closing 20%, now you have 5. So now you're spending $2,500, right? 25% of your total potential revenue here on a 10K product. You have to make sure that you're able to support that. So going on this example, if you're spending $500 per call, but they're all qualified, but you're closing 20% of them, great. Your cost per acquisition, your customer acquisition cost, your CAC is $2,500. Can your business support that? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, play ball, away you go. If the answer is no, then something's broken. We have to find a way to lower your cost per call from $500 to maybe $300. Maybe your ad creative sucks. Maybe your click-through rate here isn't very good. Maybe your ad copy sucks. Maybe the creative you have in your ad sucks. Maybe your headlines suck on your landing page. We have to fix that so we get more throughput or better quality throughput. So by the time you ask them to book a call, right, your cost per call is a whole lot lower. But this is the math that you have to do working backwards to figure out, and this is why I said if you're selling a $100,000 product and you have a cost per call of $1,000, well, you're still profitable. Right? There's a lot of people who will spend $10,000. Maybe you have 10 calls booked. You have a very small group of people that you actually want to sell to. Maybe we'll spend $10,000 in calls, $10,000 calls. But now you sell one to a very highly qualified person who's a perfect fit for your product. That's 10% of your total cost. Perfect. There's a lot of people who will do that every single day of the week. Okay. So we've gone through the lead cost. So click-through rate when you're first starting out. You've got your cost per lead if you're running a lead gen type of campaign. You've got cost per book call if you're running a call funnel for your higher tickets. And then if you're running a lead gen campaign, you have to track your dials. You have to track your conversations. And for me, I do getting into discovery. That's my definition for a conversation. How many of those people are qualified? Because you have to give that feedback back to the marketing team. Because if nobody's qualified, well, then your ads are talking out or calling out the wrong type of person. If everybody's qualified, you have to pass that back, being like, hey, keep going, this is working. And then you have to track your sales numbers. If you're running that book a call campaign, calls booked, perfect. How many people are booking calls? How many people are showing up? And then how many closes? Now you're also going to keep feedback or track how many people are qualified. Now, like I said, for our event consulting offer, we have a very, very high show up rate and high qualified rate because of our messaging. We're very, very niche. But if you're selling B2C, like I said, with fitness or all that stuff, if you're doing a real estate offer that's notorious for getting low qualified people, your unqualified rate is going to be higher, but also your show up rate is going to be higher as well. So you have to track that. So what that looks like for a B2C type of offer, let's say your offer is 5K, right? And let's say your cost per call is $100, but let's say you book 10 calls, but only 6 show. 10 calls booked for 40% no show on you and 6 shows. So you've spent $1,000 in ad spend. You've generated 10 calls, but only 6 show. Okay. So if you're going on a 20% close rate with your closer, the person actually doing the selling, if they're closing at 20%, well, you've got probably 1 point whatever sales that works out to be. So let's call it 1 sale out of those numbers. Great. Now you have to work it out because now you have 5K product. You've spent $1,000. So that's 20% of your total revenue coming in from that sale is going towards marketing and ad spend. Now you have commissions on top of that, and then you have your hard costs or cost of fulfillment. all of those costs involved. These are the numbers you have to know in order to not only price appropriately, but also have some benchmarks in terms of where your numbers should be. If you're spending $2,000 or 40% of your total revenue on ads and marketing, and then you have commissions and then you have fulfillment costs, you're probably going to be underwater at that point, because as you scale, as you grow, that's going to increase and you're going to have more overhead. You're just not going to have those margins that you need for that type of, if you're running a coaching business, something like that. So it's just really important to have a good handle on your close rates, cost per calls, your click-through rates for the ads, your cost per leads, and also the actual mechanics of your conversion side. Because like I said, you've got your lead gen right here. This is all, what's my cost per call? What's my cost per lead? What's the click-through rate, right? But then you have your conversion metrics, which is, how many dials are you making? What's your cost per book call? What's my close rate? Because now what you can do, once you get all the way down to this point with your closes, now you go back up. So when we first started your ad campaign, we're probably looking at, cost per call. We're probably looking at click-through rate if your ads are really, really new and you don't have any sales data to back you up. But now that we have all these sales and we have real customers, now we can go back up to the ads and the lead gen and not look at just click-through rate and not look at just cost per call. We can find what ads are actually generating the revenue. Because what you'll probably find once you start getting these numbers is, well, some ads, some campaigns are generating good cost per calls, but they're not converting into actual customers. But sometimes there are going to be some campaigns that are generating a higher cost per call that looks kind of ugly, but they're the ones who are converting. So it makes sense just to put more money into the ads that are converting, that are turning into real customers, than wasting money on a campaign that looks like it's doing well with a low cost per call, but it's really not generating any revenue. Right? But you have to have sales and have the data come in and track all this stuff and be able to track, okay, well, these prospects came from this ad. These calls were booked from this ad set, these ads. So now you can go backwards and actually start tracking, okay, once you have sales filtering in, okay, these 10 sales came from these 3 ads. We're going to pump these ones up because they're the ones who are producing paying customers at the end of the day. I hope that makes sense. But these are the things you have to track and have a handle on. And like I said at the very start of this video, most people, they do not have these things tracked. They do not track these very core metrics, these core data points that you have to have a handle on to actually scale the business, okay? So I hope this helps. I've got other videos on the channel that we do all the time, centering around sales, conversion, pipelines, scripts, objections. Check those out, because this is just the tip of the spear, because there's a lot of things that go into actually converting the prospect down the road. I've got other videos on objection handling, what to do, scripting, how to build a pitch. That all goes into actually converting these prospects that are created. All right, so I hope this helps. I'll see you guys next week.